This is the Rebel Call channel. Welcome to today's show. One of the things with the solar flare that we saw was the capability the government has to manipulate the skies above. If you didn't see the video I did on HAARP in relation to them creating artificial aurora light shows in the sky, you should go and see it. Because they've openly admitted that they can do that. Now we've seen, after this solar flare, just how far they could stretch this across the entire Earth. We know there's more than one HAARP system, more than just the one in Alaska. They are planted all around the Earth. We also know that those 5G towers have the capability to do so. And on top of that, we know that the geoengineering going on in the sky is also creating a smoke screen in the sky that they can reflect this imagery off of. And it's very important to note, after all of this that we just saw, that a few days ago, an article came out talking about how the Vatican is preparing guidelines for apparitions and other supernatural phenomena. So what does this all mean? This all means that we're getting closer to Project Bluebeam being released. Again, when the government has these things documented, when the government has these things patented, and the government shows us, like they do time and time again, of the capability they have with technology, they're not just doing these things and creating these things to never use. They have been waiting for a time period where it's not just about having the technology ready. It's been ready. It's about being able to deceive the masses on a large scale. Will they fall for what the deception that the government has planned? And we could see around us right now that we are living in a time period where we have people who are very, very easy to manipulate and deceive, Christians included. And obviously, if you're a Christian at this point or a follower of Christ, and you actually think that the Vatican are following God's word and they're here to serve God, well, then you're ready to be deceived. But the Vatican is coming out. Listen to this. The Vatican's preparing to release a document giving guidance on how to discern supernatural phenomena. The Holy See Press Office announced the upcoming document will be published May 17th, and I'll cover it then, with a live stream press conference featuring Cardinal Victor Manuel Fernandez. Fernandez has previously said that they are in the process of finalizing a new text with clear guidelines and norms for the discernment of apparitions and other phenomena, according to the National Catholic Register. An apparition refers to an instance in which a divine entity, such as a saint, the Virgin Mary, or Christ himself, makes itself known to a person on earth. The concept is a recurring theme in the Bible, and most Christian denominations affirm the belief that such brushes with the supernatural can still occur in various capacities. Okay, so what they're telling you here is that they're going to be using Project Bluebeam, and they're going to prepare Christians out there to be able to decipher what's real and what's not. And of course, we know the Vatican will be telling you that any deception that's being created by the Vatican themselves and the government, they'll be telling you that it's real, that it's an act from God. And of course, everybody out there at this point, if you're believing in the Vatican, it's time to wake up. Okay? The Vatican's revealing their fruits. They've revealed their fruits for quite some time with the things that they're telling you to accept. All right, the agendas they're telling you to go along with. They push the climate agenda. They tell you that you need to accept LGBT in the church. Okay, we can all clearly see, using discernment, of who the Vatican truly serves. Now, all of us who are truly awake and understand where the Vatican and Israel are at the top of this grand scheme that's going on, we're not going to be deceived by this. But there's many Christians who are. So they're going to come out and tell you, I mean, is anyone listening to this? They're going to come out and tell you that, well, if you see a saint, the Virgin Mary, or Christ himself, and they make themselves known to a person on earth, that the Vatican is going to tell you how to spot true versus false supernatural phenomena. Okay? This is confirmation that they're preparing to use Project Bluebeam, and then they're going to use religious organizations like the Vatican to convince people out there that it's truly a sign from God. And we see how easily deceived Christians already are. Okay? You probably, if you read some of the comments under my videos, even about the Aurora, Borealis and everything else that's going on, that Christians truly see this as a sign from God. They refuse to believe that the government has the capabilities to manipulate the weather. And it's very clear to me that they are not familiar with a lot of scripture that talks about Satan and deception, right? Even in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 9, even him whose coming is according to the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders, right? Lying wonders. That's what we're seeing, lying wonders. They're creating things using weather modification, geoengineering, etc., to create potentially a fake second coming or even a rapture. So let me start by showing you, for those of you that don't know, look at some of the stuff that they've shown us. Okay, these are some of the things that are out there that they show at gaming conventions, at Las Vegas, Saudi Arabia, okay, even weather phenomenons where we could see that they're using Project Bluebeam already. This is only what they're showing us now. Look how realistic some of these clips are. Again, these are things that are already out in the open. Imagine just how much more sophisticated it is. But these are things that they're going to use. It's going to look along the lines of this to create a deception in the sky.
Outside the Game Awards 2023.
So when we see those types of deceptions, right, that they can create easily, again, like I said, those are things that we only see now, that we could see in Las Vegas. We could see, some of these holographic images they use at concerts. Just imagine how much more sophisticated it is. Now, when they're coming out and telling you this, the Vatican, it clearly tells us that they're going to create and use Project Bluebeam along the lines of a potential fake rapture event, which there's been predictive programming for. Remember, I showed you some of the predictive programming in the past, even in The Simpsons, where they show you a rapture occurring. They're preparing to deceive Christians. This is the rapture scene from The Simpsons.
Leave your body, Seymour.
He is risen production.
Where did my Christian limo driver go?
The baby I chose to have baptized is gone!
It's the rapture, Shauna. Virtuous have gone to heaven, and the rest of us have been left below. Because we rejected God, tacitly accepting Satan, we must suffer through the apocalypse.
Why did I put my faith in science and technology?
And again, if they're going to be the authority figure, if they're going to come out and tell you, well, this is what it is and this is what it isn't, clearly they're preparing people to be looking up to the skies for a massive deception. Now, we know that a lot of churches have been preparing their flocks for raptures and date setting, and they continue to wait and they continue to look. And obviously the worse things get here on earth, which every day they're getting worse, more and more Christians are just looking up, hoping to be taken out of this. And that means that they're ripe for the picking. That means that their minds could easily be deceived. And the government plans on taking full advantage of that. Again, lots of Christians come to my channel. They come to me. They get very upset with me talking about this. They say, God overrides the devil. I have no doubt about it that God overrides the devil. I know that God is stronger and more powerful than the devil. But I also know that it's very easy to deceive people this day and age because I'm watching it around me on a day in and day out basis. I see Christians deceived every second. I see Christians going to churches and I go, and I listen to, think about all the churches we've all discussed where we see them openly talking about the LGBT, they let trans come in and preach at the churches. I mean, how easy is it to deceive a Christian if they're going to stay in that church? We can all look at them and be like, well, they're not true Christians, but you don't know what's in that person's heart. But they're easily deceived, clearly, if they're thinking that doctrine is telling them to accept the, a tranny in the church reading to kids. I mean, this goes deeper and deeper and deeper, and we see how easy it is to deceive. So the Catholic Church is urging extreme prudence before ascribing phenomena to a supernatural force, warning that being too quick to attribute divine origin to explainable occurrences can damage the faith and warp belief. Okay, so they're telling you it from that perspective of not being deceived. But when they use something, when they use Bluebeam here, you could bet your bottom dollar that the Vatican will be coming out and telling you this was not deception, that this was truly divine intervention, right? And again, we've seen a lot of manipulation going on, even in places like Dubai, where they've been putting up and using projections to show you dual moons. Does anybody remember in Dubai? I could do a separate video on it, but they were putting up projections of 2 moons in the sky, and they're still doing stuff like this, and they're deceiving people into thinking that this is some type of divine message. And Christians refuse to believe that the government's manipulating them. And we know that the devil is the ultimate liar. We know that the devil tries to do everything he can to mimic God. He's an inversion of God. So these are fake miracles and fake signs that they're creating to deceive Christians. That's why we have to be as wise as serpents and as innocent as doves. And the Vatican, this article continues to say, the last time the Vatican Doctrinal Office released guidance on apparitions, was in 1978 under Pope Paul VI. That document, Norms Regarding the Manner of Proceedings in the Discernment of Presumed Apparitions or Revelations, was released due to the increased influence of mass media. Okay, in 1978, the influence of mass media then versus now. Think about that. Think about how scary that is with technology. And again, because of how dependent people are on technology and how they look to technology for all their answers, right? This is how we know that now is the time to go forward with this, okay? Because people are discerning things not even through their own 2 eyes. They're discerning things through their phone. Even looking up at the sky. How many stories came out about the solar flare and how you needed to use your phone to really, truly see it? So they're seeing through another lens. And clearly most people we know are spending more time looking at their phones than they are at the real world, which tells us they're literally not even living in the same realm that we are right now. Okay. And again, we're talking about the spiritual realm and the physical realm. A lot of these people are in the digital realm, which in essence is really like the spiritual realm. So the miracle of Fatima in 1917 is perhaps the most well-documented apparition in the modern day. After an alleged series of appearances by the Virgin Mary to several peasant children that promised a public miracle, tens of thousands of people in Fatima, Portugal, claimed to witness the sun move erratically across the sky and produce radiant colors for several minutes. The Catholic Church recognized the supernatural aspect of the event in 1930. Pope Pius XII formally approved the apparitions a decade later. Last month, the Vatican released a document providing guidance on the place of human dignity in the modern age. Okay, I think it's very clear when we see this supposed solar flare, which of course is a man-made solar flare. This is man-made stuff that's going on. When the Vatican comes out a few days before this event and tells us, well, we need to, we're going to be the authority figure here for Christians to tell you how to decipher true divine, intervention or divine spirits in the sky or signs and symbols in the sky. We'll tell you, we'll be the authority when they're the ones who are behind the deception that's about to occur. For those of you that don't know about Project Bluebeam, let me play for you a few clips about Project Bluebeam. Share this video with people so they understand that this technology has been in place for a long period of time and the government has been planning to use it on the masses for a long period of time. Here's Project Bluebeam.
1986, while stationed at an underground installation near Boulder, Colorado, I was introduced to Project Skybeam by Lieutenant General Andrew Garris. I was then led down a corridor and into a large hangar where a stealth bomber hovered only 20 feet above me. I stood there confused. Then Garris looked over at me and smiled, then asked if I was certain of what I was seeing. I replied, of course. What else could it be? I was then shocked to find out that this wasn't a real craft. It was a projected hologram. Since the early 1950s, scientists have been developing holographic technology, and over the years improved it to a state that we can only imagine. As I stood there staring at the bomber, which looked so absolutely real and solid that I could reach up and touch it, I contemplated the possibilities. What if this projection was 1,000 feet up in the sky? How would anyone know that that was an illusion? The Phoenix Lights craft, witnessed by 10,000 people, was the first grand-scale skybeam test upon the public. It succeeded beyond expectations. In October 1938, Orson Welles unleashed his War of the Worlds radio broadcast to the American public. It was so realistically portrayed, vast portions of the population went into panic. Terrified citizens scrambled to evacuate their cities in droves. America had been easily tricked by very simple means. To amplify this response, those who are truly in power of not only our country, but all the countries on the planet, and who are the true purveyors of the depopulation process, have formulated the final stage of their sinister plan. In the year 2024, a global event will alter the course of mankind's future. The world will stand witness to a massive alien invasion. Thousands of projected holographic alien warships will blanket the skies, sending people into a global panic. Real military crafts within the holograms will inflict actual damage to the surrounding areas to sell the gimmick. And as a result of the ensuing human chaos, a one-world government will immediately form without any resistance from the people. They will be the new world order.
If enough people believe that something is real, then it is real in its effects.
In terms of the social reality.
In terms of the social reality, in terms of what people act according to their beliefs.
Yeah.
And that opens a question of, really at two levels, perhaps something that we are creating ourselves, perhaps a series of images that we are projecting. I think Carl Jung came very close to expressing that idea in one of his books. Or could it be manipulated purposely by people who have the technology to simulate UFO sightings? And people say, well, of course not. Who would do a thing like that? Well, I would remind you that during the Watergate investigation, it was discovered that there was a plan originated in the White House to surface a submarine off the coast of Cuba and paint the second coming of Christ over the island of Cuba using holograms. Which is well within our technology today. The idea was that since there is a large Catholic population in Cuba, they would be so upset by this vision that this would saturate the communication channels, the telephone system in Cuba, long enough for an invasion to take place.
How interesting. I'd never heard of that.
Well, I think that's a classic in psychological warfare, but that kind of manipulation is well understood, and I have personally investigated several apparently genuine UFO cases where there was, in fact, my conclusion, the conclusion of scientists working with me, was that there was, in fact, a manipulation taking place, and that it was not a hoax on the part of the witnesses, but a hoax on the part of somebody much better organized.
What do you think about aliens?
I don't think there are any. At one time, I thought that there were, simply based upon documents that I'd seen while I was attached to the intelligence briefing team, the commander-in-chief of the Pacific Fleet. At that time, and even for many years afterwards, I did not believe that the government would use me in that way. I had devoted my whole life to government service. I had been in the Air Force, I was in the Navy, I was a river patrol boat captain in Vietnam, I had proved myself, I had combat ribbons with the V for Valor. There was no doubt of my loyalty to my country. And maybe that's why it was so easy to use me, because I wouldn't doubt that what I saw was real. But over the years, I've done a lot of research. And what I've discovered is there's no proof existing anywhere that extraterrestrials are real, or that have ever visited this planet, or that they exist anywhere in the universe. There is not one shred of evidence anywhere. There is lots of evidence, tons of it in fact, that there are a group of people collectively known as the Illuminati who want us to believe in some extraterrestrial threat from space so that they can cause a world government, bringing together of all the people to resist that external threat. And the first time that I saw any reference to that, I was reading some papers from the Carnegie Endowment Fund, and there was a record of a speech. It was a dinner for Viscount Ishii of the Japanese delegation, the Japanese imperial delegation, in 1917. And John Dewey was one of the speakers. And the first sentence out of his mouth, as I was reading this, almost fell out of my chair, because this was in 1917. And he said, the best way to cause all people of the world to come together in one world government and end war forever would be if we were attacked by some other species from some other planet. And boy, that just clicked with me, and I knew that this is just another scam. This is the age of deception. There's no doubt about it. And then 8 times during Reagan's administration, he inserted almost the exact same phrase into 8 of his speeches. And it's a scam. That's what I can tell you. What they call UFOs, these craft that fly around the sky, are real. But they're not piloted by some little green guy from some other planet. They're owned and operated by the United States of America for one, the Soviet Union for another, probably Great Britain, Canada. I think the first really operable ones were probably manufactured in Western Canada, in the wilderness, in a place especially built to create those machines, like we created the Manhattan Project, and the same kind of secrecy surrounded it. So the technology is real. It's been kept secret, and it's been used to promote this concept that there's an alien threat to this earth. The cattle mutilations I've discovered in my research are nothing more than what's left after the government does its secret tests on the low-level radiation leakage from its atomic weapons assembly plants and atomic power plants. It's a low-level radiation monitoring project. And if you look at what's missing in the cattle, you'll see that it's just as clear as day. They take the lips, they take the tongue, they take a 6-inch patch of skin, they core out the rectum, the colon area, where those kinds of things would collect after they pass through the digestive system. On female cows, they take the udder to check for low-level radiation in the milk. This is being passed to the calves. And these are all grazing animals that graze on the grass where the radiation falls when it falls from the air. And it's just an incredible deception. And I'm just amazed that people have fallen for it in the manner that they have in the absence of any proof whatsoever. I mean, they cite hearsay as proof.
Well, what about all of the alien abductions?
They're not abductions. They're the results of a tremendously successful and very sophisticated mind control operation, all of which has been in development. Well, they started working on those kinds of things since before World War II. But they have perfected them. On my website, I have a patent of a machine that can read your brainwaves, can recombine them in a computer and send them back to you and make you think things happened that never happened. I mean, you can't get a patent for something like that unless it really works. You have to prove it to the patent office. It works. A patent was issued. And this is just one of the things that snuck by them that hasn't. Because when people invent things like this, they're sucked up by the government immediately, and then they're put behind the veil of national security and classified, and then nobody knows about them. But every once in a while, something sneaks by them. And when you do these searches in the patent office, and the trademark office, and in the copyright office, you come up with some real gems once in a while, and that was one. Also, the congressional investigations into the intelligence community has revealed the existence of these programs, and there's no secret about it. It's documented. Project Artichoke, Project MK Ultra, MK Naomi. I could go on and on and on all day long. And if you had the time in your movie, we could lay out all the documentation, which is official government documentation, and prove beyond any shadow of a doubt that it's true. But that's what it is. It's not extraterrestrials coming down. The human body cannot pass through walls and roofs or through windows that are closed. This is all the product of the imagination and people's willingness to believe something because they want it to be true. I don't know why they would want it to be true. You see, because if it were true, these are not friendly aliens. They're doing some terrible things to people. If I were to kidnap somebody, pass them up through the roof, and take them somewhere, and perform operations on them, and take samples of semen and ova from their, reproductive organs, and plant thoughts in their mind, and all this kind of stuff, and then bring them back, guess where I'd be right now? In prison. It's kidnapping. It's criminal. It's a terrible thing. So there's a morbid sense about all this too, is that people want to be hurt for some reason. I don't understand that. But that certainly is something that somebody needs to look at. Why do people feel that this needs to be real? What in them says, I want to be abducted and abused and kidnapped and raped and all of this stuff against my will? Because they seem to take some kind of satisfaction that this is happening. And nobody's talking about the fact that this is a terrible thing to happen. If I were to do that to you, you wouldn't be too happy, would you? But somehow it's okay if an alien does it? I don't think so. It's all bullshit. It's a lie.
The strategy that Werner von Braun taught me was that first the Russians are going to be considered to be the enemy. In fact, when I met him in '74, they were the enemy, the identified enemy. We were told that they had killer satellites. We were told that they were coming to get us and control us, the dirty commies, that whole story. First, the Russians were the enemy against whom we're going to build space-based weapons. Then terrorists would be identified, and that was soon to follow. We heard a lot about terrorism. Then we were going to identify third world country crazies. We now call them nations of concern. But he said that would be the third enemy against whom we would be needing to build space-based weapons. And the next enemy was asteroids. Now, at this point, he kind of chuckled the first time he said it. Asteroids, against asteroids, we're going to build space-based weapons. So it was funny then. And the funniest one of all was against what he called aliens, extraterrestrials. That would be the final card. And over and over and over during the 4 years that I knew him and was giving his speeches for him, he would bring up that last card. And remember, Carol, the last card is the alien card. We're going to have to build space-based weapons against aliens. And all of it, he said, is a lie. He didn't mention a timeline, but he said that it was going to be speeding up faster than anybody could possibly imagine. That the effort to put weapons in space was not only based on a lie, but would accelerate past the point of people even understanding it until it was already up there.
So again, there's no such thing as coincidences, okay? This is May 8th. This article comes out about the Vatican preparing guidelines for apparitions and other supernatural phenomena, okay? Clearly, this tells us that it's going to be an event in the sky. Everybody's been told for the last couple of months to constantly look up, right? We had that pop-up solar eclipse. We got this pop-up solar flare. Everybody's staring in the sky. They're telling you to look through different lenses, in some cases telling you wear 3D glasses, in other cases telling you to look through your phone to be able to see the solar flare. Okay, some type of deception is coming in the sky. And it's very easy to sit here and say, well, everybody's been talking about Project Bluebeam for a long time, and nothing has happened. We know with the dependency on technology, it is highly likely that it's now more so than ever before that they're going to use this. And with all the stuff that we've seen released and how realistic it looks, we can only imagine how realistic this will look. And we clearly see how easily deceived Christians are becoming because of how horrible the world around us is. Which is why I tell people, the Bible talks about being as wise as serpents and as innocent as doves, okay? Which means that there's going to be deceptions. The Bible tells us about great deceptions. Christians out there whenever I talk about the deceptions and the capability the government has, they just go, no, it's God doing it. Because they want to believe that God's doing it because they want to get out of here now. Okay? Just like Christians who believe in rapture doctrine, who every single day are thinking that the rapture is closer and closer, and then it doesn't happen, and then the next day they're like, okay, well, maybe it's going to be this September 23rd, or maybe it's going to be there. I warn you because it's very easy to be deceived when the world around us is crumbling and burning. It's easy to be deceived because you want this to end and go away. You want to be raptured away, right? But think about how they're going to use that to their advantage to deceive you into things. The devil is a liar. These people are liars, and they have the technology to mimic these types of events, and they plan on using it to deceive you. So be as wise as serpents and as innocent as doves. I thank everybody for being here. I will cover this in more detail later on when we actually see the Vatican come out and tell us what those guidelines are. They're going to say, look, whatever you see in the sky, make sure you believe what we tell you is what they're going to say. And people out there will be duped. I know we could all look at it and we can laugh and we could say, hey, I mean, come on. We know that this is coming. But look how many people actually even think the stuff with the tornadoes over and over again. They think that it's God's judgment and God's wrath. Then they go, who are you to say that it's not? Well, I'm not saying that it's not. I'm saying to be as wise as a serpent. Okay? And understand that they have the technology to do this. So why would you put it past them? Why would you say that they wouldn't use this? Because they're good people? Is the devil a good person? No. Is the devil's minions good people? No, they're not. So why would they not use this technology? What do you think they created this technology to do? To deceive. Who is their ultimate enemy? Us, followers of Christ. So who do you think that they care about deceiving the most? Us. I thank everybody for being here. Hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.